My child. The moment your soulmate was about to say, "I do" to someone else, a truth hidden for years was about to enter that wedding hall. Everyone believed the story was ending, but a secret connected to you was waiting to change everything. The person standing beside them was ready to take a place that was never meant for them, and one revelation made the entire room silent. Before the final words were spoken, your name carried a truth that nobody was prepared to hear. Listen carefully. Because sometimes the deepest love stories do not end when people walk away, they begin when the hidden truth finally comes to light. There are moments in life when everyone around you thinks they understand what is happening, but they only see what is visible. They see the smiles, the celebration, the promises, and the beautiful pictures being created in front of them. But they do not see the memories buried inside someone's heart. They do not see the nights when someone stayed awake thinking about a person they could never forget. They do not see the silent pain behind a decision that looked simple from the outside. That day, the wedding hall was filled with happiness. People were dressed beautifully, families were smiling, and everyone believed they were witnessing the beginning of a perfect new chapter. The flowers were placed perfectly, the lights were shining, and every person there thought they knew the ending of the story. They thought the person standing at the front had finally chosen their future. They thought the past was forgotten. They thought the old feelings had disappeared. But there was one thing nobody knew. There was a name that had never truly left their heart. There was a memory that was never erased. There was a secret that had been protected because revealing it could change everything. Your soulmate stood there trying to control emotions that nobody could understand. Everyone around them saw someone ready to start a new life, but inside their heart was a battle between what the world expected and what their soul had always known. The person they were about to marry had no idea that a single truth about you could change the entire atmosphere of that room. The guests had no idea that behind the silence was a story filled with unfinished emotions, missed chances, and a connection that never completely disappeared. Years ago, something happened between you and your soulmate that nobody else understood. Maybe circumstances separated you. Maybe pride created distance. Maybe family pressure, timing, or misunderstandings pushed two people apart who still carried feelings for each other. Sometimes people walk away not because love is gone, but because life becomes complicated. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. And that was the secret. The world thought you were just a chapter from the past. But you were the chapter they never finished reading. As the ceremony moved closer, someone noticed a change. The person who was supposed to be completely focused on the wedding looked distracted. They looked at the crowd differently, as if they were searching for something they had been missing for a long time. There was a feeling that something important was about to happen. Then came the moment nobody expected. A question was asked. A conversation was revealed. A hidden truth about you came out. And suddenly, the confidence inside that hall disappeared. People who were laughing became quiet. People who were celebrating started looking at each other. Because they realized the story they believed was incomplete. Your soulmate had carried something inside for a long time. A message. A memory. A promise. A truth that they never shared because they believed it was too late. But life has a strange way of bringing forgotten emotions back at the exact moment when people think everything is already decided. Don't skip. Because the biggest changes often happen in the moments when everyone thinks there is nothing left to change. The secret was not just about your name. It was about what your presence meant in their life. It was about a time when you were there during a moment nobody else saw. It was about a connection that was built without needing to be explained. It was about the small things that stayed in their mind even after years passed. They remembered the conversations nobody else heard. They remembered the support nobody else gave. They remembered how they felt when they were with you. And that feeling became impossible to ignore. The person standing beside them at the wedding suddenly realized there was a part of your soulmate's heart they never truly reached. They realized they were about to marry someone who still carried a story from the past. The entire hall waited. Nobody knew what would happen next. Because sometimes one truth can be stronger than years of silence. Sometimes one name can bring back emotions people tried to hide. Sometimes the person everyone thought was forgotten becomes the person everyone starts talking about. And in that moment, your soulmate had a choice. Follow the path everyone prepared for them, or finally accept the truth they had been running from for so long. The room became completely silent as the hidden story started coming out. The same people who thought they knew everything about the relationship suddenly discovered there was a deeper connection nobody had seen. There were reasons behind the distance. There were reasons behind the silence. There were reasons why your soulmate never completely moved forward. Because some people can leave your life, but they never leave the place they created inside your heart. And when your name was mentioned, the reaction was not what anyone expected. The person who was about to say, "I do," looked like someone who had just been reminded of the one thing they were trying hardest to forget. The truth about you was finally standing in front of everyone. And nobody in that hall was ready for what happened next. The moment the truth about you entered that wedding hall, everything that seemed perfect on the outside started falling apart on the inside. The music that was filling the room suddenly felt distant. The smiles on people's faces disappeared because they realized they were not watching a simple wedding anymore. They were watching a story that had been hidden for years finally coming into the light. Your soulmate stood there with emotions that were impossible to hide. For so long, they had tried to convince themselves that everything was fine, that the past was the past, and that moving forward was the only choice. They told themselves that memories fade, that time heals everything, and that a new beginning could erase an old connection. But the heart does not always follow the plans people make. There are some people who leave a mark so deep that even years cannot remove it. There are some moments that stay alive even when two people stop talking. And there are some names that create a reaction before the mind even has time to understand why. That was your place in their story. Not everyone in that hall knew what happened between you and your soulmate. They only knew what they saw. They saw distance. They saw silence. They saw two people who were no longer together. They assumed the connection was gone. But they never saw the private moments when your soulmate remembered you. They never saw the times when a familiar song, a certain place, or a simple memory brought your name back into their thoughts. They never saw the battle inside their heart between what they were expected to do and what they truly felt. The person standing beside them at the altar started understanding something painful. They understood that a part of your soulmate was still connected to a story that had never received a proper ending. And then another truth came forward. A secret message. Something that had been kept hidden. Something your soulmate never had the courage to say directly. The message was not about anger. It was not about blame. It was about a feeling that survived through everything. It was about the words they wanted to say when you were still close. The words they wanted to say when life separated you. The words they kept inside because they believed the moment had passed. But sometimes the moment does not pass. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes destiny creates a situation where people have to face the truth they avoided for years. Don't skip. Because the next part of this story reveals why your soulmate kept your memory alive even when everyone believed you were forgotten. The people around them started asking questions. How could someone be standing at the beginning of a new life while still carrying so much emotion from the past? How could someone smile in front of everyone while hiding a story that still affected their heart? The answer was simple. Because sometimes people choose what looks right before they choose what feels right. Sometimes family expectations become louder than personal feelings. Sometimes fear becomes stronger than honesty. Your soulmate was not only fighting against a decision. They were fighting against everything that made them believe they had to let you go. They remembered the moment when everything changed between you. The misunderstanding. The separation. The words that were never explained. The goodbye that felt final but never truly felt complete. They remembered how different life felt after you were gone. They remembered that no matter how many people entered their life, something always felt missing. And that missing piece had your name. The wedding hall became a place where hidden emotions could no longer stay hidden. The same people who came to celebrate were now witnessing something much deeper. They were seeing a person realize that the biggest decision of their life was being made while a part of their heart was still somewhere else. Your soulmate looked around the room and understood that one choice could change everything. One choice could break expectations. One choice could reveal the truth. One choice could finally bring peace to a heart that had been carrying questions for too long. Because love is not always about who stands beside you when everyone is watching. Sometimes love is about the person your heart searches for when nobody is watching. And in that moment, your soulmate finally understood something they had been avoiding. They were not afraid of losing the wedding. They were afraid of losing the person they never truly stopped loving. The secret about you was no longer a secret. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Because the next words spoken inside that hall were about to decide the future of every person standing there, the silence inside that hall became heavier than anyone could imagine. Every person was waiting for the next moment, waiting to understand whether this was only an emotional memory or the truth that would completely change the future. Your soulmate looked at the faces around them, the people who came to celebrate, the people who believed they already knew the ending of this story, but deep inside they knew the real story was never about that wedding day. It was about a feeling that survived everything that happened before. For years, your soulmate tried to become the person everyone expected them to be. They tried to accept the path chosen by circumstances. They tried to believe that a comfortable future could replace a connection that once felt impossible to replace. They tried to convince themselves that happiness could be created by forgetting the past. But the heart has its own memories. The heart remembers the person who stood beside you during your hardest moments. The heart remembers the voice that gave you strength when nobody else understood. The heart remembers the small conversations, the silent support, and the moments that looked ordinary to the world but meant everything to you. And that was why your name had so much power in that room. Because you were not just someone from the past. You were the person connected to a part of their life they never stopped carrying. The person who revealed the secret finally explained what had been hidden for so long. It was not a random memory. It was not just an old story. It was something your soulmate had protected because they were afraid that if the truth came out, everything they had built would collapse. They had kept something that belonged to you. A promise. A feeling. A moment that proved the connection between you was real. Everyone realized that the wedding was not only about two people standing together. It was about a choice between living according to expectations or finally accepting what the heart had been saying silently for years. The person who was about to marry your soulmate felt a pain that was difficult to explain. Because sometimes the hardest truth is not discovering that someone has a past. The hardest truth is discovering that the past still has a heartbeat. The room was filled with questions. Why did they never tell anyone? Why did they hide this for so long? Why did your name still create such an emotional reaction after everything that happened? And the answer came from a place of honesty that had been missing for a long time. Because your soulmate was afraid. Afraid of admitting that after all the distance, after all the silence, after all the years, a part of their heart was still waiting for you. Don't skip. Because the truth that came next revealed the one reason they never completely moved on. Your soulmate remembered the day you walked away. They remembered the words left unsaid. They remembered how easily people around them told them to forget, to move forward, to find someone else. Everyone had advice, but nobody knew what was happening inside their heart. They saw your absence every day. They felt the difference. They compared every new moment to the memories they had with you. And slowly, they understood something they could never explain to anyone. Some connections are not measured by time. Some bonds are not destroyed by distance. Some people remain special even when life takes them in different directions. The wedding hall that was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter became the place where an old truth finally returned. Your soulmate looked back at everything they had chosen and realized that a decision made from pressure can never bring the same peace as a decision made from the heart. The guests who came to witness a celebration were now witnessing a confession. A confession that carried years of hidden emotions. A confession that showed how one person could still matter even after everyone believed they were gone. And somewhere in that moment, your soulmate understood that the biggest mistake was not losing you before. The biggest mistake was believing they could live forever pretending they did not miss you. Because sometimes life brings people back into our thoughts before it brings them back into our lives. Sometimes a person appears in a memory because the story is not finished. And sometimes the secret everyone tries to hide becomes the truth everyone has to accept. That day, everyone in the hall learned something they would never forget. A person can stand next to someone else, but their heart can still remember another name. And the name that changed everything in that room was yours. The next moment was the one nobody expected, because your soulmate finally had to answer the question they had been avoiding for years. What does the heart choose when the whole world is watching? The entire hall was waiting for the answer, but nobody understood the storm happening inside your soulmate's heart. The person standing in front of everyone had spent so long trying to be strong, trying to make the decision that would keep everyone else happy, trying to convince themselves that the feelings from the past were nothing more than memories. But standing there in that moment, with your name finally connected to the truth, they could no longer hide from what they already knew. They looked at the life they were about to choose, and they realized something painful. A beautiful future built on a hidden truth could never feel complete. A promise made while carrying a different person in the heart could never bring true peace. The people around them only saw the ceremony. They saw the decorations, the smiles, the excitement, and the celebration. But they did not see the years of emotions that brought them to this exact moment. They did not see the nights when your soulmate wondered what would have happened if things had been different. They did not see the silent questions that remained unanswered. What if you had stayed? What if the misunderstanding never happened? What if they had been brave enough to tell you the truth before it was too late? Those questions lived quietly inside them for years. And now, they were standing in front of everyone, facing the one truth they tried to escape. You were never just a memory. You were the person they compared everything to. You were the person whose absence created a space nobody else could fill. The person who revealed the secret continued explaining the story that had been hidden. They talked about moments that proved how much you mattered. They talked about the way your soulmate changed after losing you. They talked about the difference between a person who moves on and a person who simply learns how to hide their feelings. Everyone became emotional because they realized something powerful. Sometimes people do not forget someone. Sometimes they only become better at pretending they did. Don't skip. Because the final truth about your soulmate's heart was the one thing nobody inside that hall expected to hear. Your soulmate finally admitted what they had been afraid to accept. They admitted that even after time passed, even after life changed, even after they tried to build something new, a part of them was still connected to you. Not because the past was perfect. Not because there were no mistakes. But because what you shared was real. And real connections leave traces. They leave memories. They leave feelings that cannot simply disappear because circumstances changed. The person standing beside your soulmate understood that this was not about winning or losing. It was about accepting a truth that had been hidden for too long. A truth that everyone deserved to know before making a life-changing decision. The atmosphere in the hall changed completely. The same place that was prepared for a wedding became the place where honesty finally appeared. The same people who came expecting a celebration witnessed a moment of courage. Because sometimes the hardest thing a person can do is admit that their heart has been telling them the answer all along. Your soulmate thought about all the moments they wished they could go back to. They thought about the conversations they should have had. They thought about the time they spent trying to convince themselves that forgetting you was easier than facing their feelings, but the heart does not erase what mattered. It simply waits. And when the truth finally arrives, everything that was hidden comes back stronger. That day, your name became more than just a name. It became the proof that some connections survive distance. It became the proof that some stories pause but never truly end. It became the proof that sometimes the person everyone thinks is gone is the person who was quietly remembered all along. The entire hall waited for the final decision. Nobody knew what would happen. Nobody knew which path your soulmate would choose. But one thing was clear. After that moment, nothing could return to the way it was before. Because once the truth is revealed, people cannot pretend they never heard it. Once the heart speaks, silence is no longer possible. And your soulmate finally understood that the biggest question was not who they were standing beside. The biggest question was who their heart had been waiting for all this time. The answer had been there from the beginning. It was the name that changed everything. It was your name.